Welcome back to our special broadcast on the 2016 budget. Pravin Gordhan, Minister of Finance, did surprise us. He hasn't raised personal income tax, but the usual suspects, your sin taxes and your fuel levies are up by 30 cents a litre effective from April. He did bequeath some benefit. He did bequeath some benefit to social grant recipients, 11.5 billion rand over the next 3 years, and a whole lot more. But up next we have our colleagues who are on the steps taking comments and reaction from political parties as to what's going on. Let's cross over to Bulelani Philip first.
All right, thank you very much, Nombu. Basically, we'll be taking the political reactions as the political parties are coming out. Of course, this budget has been billed a do-or-die budget, whether South Africa can be able to avert, that credit rating downgrade. We're going to be joined on the line now. Mr. David Mania, the spokesperson for finance in the DA. Do you think the finance minister has done enough to avert that potential downgrade?
I'm afraid to say I'm not sure that the minister has done enough. Key for the ratings agencies is what the minister had to say that would promote particularly economic growth and jobs in South Africa. And I don't think the minister made a strong enough statement and announced new measures to boost the economy and to create jobs in South Africa. Also, I think that the fiscal consolidation path is probably not tight enough. There will be no additional spending cuts in this financial year, and that we believe that there ought to have been deeper cuts to spending, and that the minister should have made announcements to cut consumption expenditure and cut, for example, President Jacob Zuma's bloated cabinet, which could have saved 4.7 billion rand a year. On the positive side, we do welcome the fact that the minister said that the SAA will now begin to look for an equity partner, which might open up the opportunity for private sector investment in SAA.
All right, Mr. David Mania, the spokesperson for the DA on finance, giving us his view on the issues that have been raised by the finance minister. And now we're going to be crossing to the other side of the precinct where my colleague Abra Babia is standing by.
With me right now, representing the ACDP in Parliament, I have Steve Swart, who will be speaking to me about the party's views on the Minister's budget speech today. Mr. Swart, credit rating agencies are definitely watching right now. How do you think they will be responding to what our Finance Minister said today?
Well, I think they would be encouraged by the very strong focus on fiscal consolidation. That is reducing our government debt levels and addressing the budget deficit. How do you do that? You reduce government expenditure. And so we saw 25 billion rand reduction over 3 years. That is to be welcomed. And we also saw slight increases in taxes, not personal taxes though, which is to be welcomed. We saw the focus on SOEs, which is also to be welcomed, to rationalize SOEs. They have been a drain on our country, and that is something that we particularly welcome from the ACDP side. We would have liked to have seen a bit more attention on drought relief, but there are a number of positives to be taken from this budget, which I think should reassure the ratings agencies and should reassure foreign and domestic investors.
I see Mr. Ngaba. Oh, sorry. I see Dr. Molded of the FF Plus behind me. I'm just going to grab him as well. So what do you think about what the minister said today? Your colleague from the ACDP just mentioned not enough focus on the drought, which I'm sure is a big concern to your party. Tell me what you think.
No, I agree on that one. It was very vague on that. He said there will be some measures will be announced later on. Let's hope before we criticize it, because there was not enough on that. But from my point of view, I think the whole budget was back to economic basics. And that's positive. My only worry is, why must we be in this deep trouble before you go back to basics? Because the same ANC got us into this almost junk situation, and now they're doing the right things, revenue more in the sense, more as the discipline on the other side. And then surely we also welcome the whole SOE situation. He said there's no privatization, but he's doing exactly the right things. Technically it's privatization, talking about rationalization, partnerships. That's the step in the right direction. We hopefully welcome that and hope that the whole civil service can go in with him and do what ought to be done, and don't see this only as a PR exercise that they can continue as always. They can't continue as always.
Thank you for your time, sir. Bulelani, we're crossing back to you now.
All right, we're still taking more political reactions in front of the stairs of the National Assembly. Now, of course, there's been a lot of expectation going into this budget. Now, we're joined by Mr. Narendra Singh of the IFP. Of course, there's been a lot of talk around the issues of corruption and cutting government wastage. Do you think the minister has gone far enough in this budget?
Well, firstly, we must say as the IFP, we are pleasantly surprised with the budget that was tabled. The minister has certainly pressed all the right buttons. He's taken into account the fiscal constraints that we find ourselves, and he's made a commitment to cut the fat. However, time will tell whether that really happens. Cutting 25 billion rand in government expenditure over the next 3 years is a positive move. I believe we could do better if we take into account the reports of the Auditor General and the wasteful, irregular expenditure and the corruption that takes place. So I think the taxpayer could benefit more. But what is very pleasing is that there hasn't been an unnecessary burden placed on the taxpayer of the country through this budget. And revenue is going to be derived from excise duty, the general fuel levies and sin taxes. And I think that's a positive move where he hasn't touched income tax and corporate taxation.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Narendra Singh of the IFP. Again, we're going to be crossing over to my colleague, Abra Babia, who's also standing by on the other side of the precinct.
I'm now going to speak to Ngaba Kwankwa of the UDM. Sir, fiscal consolidation. What are your thoughts on the announcements as far as that's concerned?
Well, overall, we think it was a good budget. The minister was able to maintain a good balance between maintaining social spending and embarking on a fiscal consolidation program at the same time. But as we always say, the taste of the pudding will obviously be in the eating, because in order for him to make a success of this program, he needs the buy-in of all his colleagues. So political will is critical. But at the same time, restoring confidence in the South African economy in general requires President Zuma to help us and just keep quiet for a few days and allow those people who know how to run the economy to do so, because every time he says something, he has the tendency of putting his foot in his mouth. We're not appreciating that. But the other issue where we think we should commend government and the minister in particular is being able to reallocate and reprioritize the resources so that they can actually be channeled towards higher education. The 16 billion rands will actually come in hand insofar as the fees campaign must fall. But I think there's still scope for more savings to be done and room for more efficiency in the system. The other issue, which is also very important, is trying to restructure some of these state-owned enterprises which are a drain on the fiscus. That was very critical, but I think we have to now start discussions and dialogue around which state-owned enterprises are they talking about and what model are we going to use going forward.
Thank you so much for your time. That was Mr. Ngaba Kwankwa of the UGM. Bulelani, who do you have on the steps with you right now?
Thank you very much, Abra. Now we've got the Chief Whip of the National Freedom Party, Professor Nhlanhla Khubisa. Do you think the Finance Minister has been able to press the right buttons for this budget speech in terms of ensuring that we actually receive or achieve that financial consolidation that is much needed?
Well, we really have a problem. First and foremost, the issue of corruption, which is ravaging our societies, the municipalities and government departments, as this can be seen through a number of service delivery protests. As the NFP, we feel that the minister should have been tighter on that one, because it's getting into the marrow of our society. Secondly, on the issue of drought, I think the minister should have said more about it, because in rural areas, for instance, the livestock is dying, and some measures should have been explicit with regard to assisting the farmers. And then finally, on the issue of basic education and higher education, we welcome that, but there's need for political will on the side of the government, because these things are easier said than done. And also on the issue of labor brokers, most of our youth are being abused. They are employed by these labor brokers and they have no benefits at all. And to us as the NFP, the minister was very silent on that one. But well, there are positive things that the minister came up with. Early childhood education and also higher education. We welcome that there will be more money given to NSFAS to assist students, but then at least something must be done, because it's easier said than done.
Just on the issue of personal income tax, you must be welcoming the fact that the consumer is not going to bear the brunt of this.
Well, we welcome that the low-income earners and the middle-income earners will get some kind of a reprieve and a relief. But of course, there are very few people who are paying tax in South Africa. In other words, put more money into the pockets of people, empower the SMEs, empower the small entrepreneurs, so that there will be more money for people to pay tax. I should think we welcome it, but these are the measures that must be put in place for people in order for them to pay tax.
All right, Professor Nhlanhla Khubisa of the National Freedom Party, giving us his views on various issues raised by the Finance Minister. We're going to cross again to my colleague Abra Babia, who's standing by.
I'm going to be speaking to Ms. Sibongile Nkomo of the IFP right now. Ma'am, yesterday we spoke and you spoke about hope. You wanted to hear a speech that instilled hope so that the normal man on the street, who you said was the shareholder, would at least, have something to celebrate today. Does the man on the street have something to celebrate today?
The man on the street has very little to celebrate, but there is a few areas which he can celebrate about. Why the man on the street has to celebrate or not to celebrate much is because the monies which are being used are monies which are used from the taxpayers. So we need to say to ourselves, if the men in the street need to celebrate, are we going to be uprooting or fighting corruption head on? Are we going to be ensuring that our people get employment in as much as they should be getting? The minister in his speech spoke about, a safe environment where a lot of our people needs employment and all that. We are still not seeing very visible and tangible things or tangible methods that are going to ensure that we create employment. He actually stated, the minister, that we are getting a lot of exports going to other countries from nuts, from berries, from grapes and all that. But in his speech he also said, irrespective of that happening, we are still seeing unemployment. So it means that things are still not okay. The men in the street may be happy, but the men in the street, the taxpayers, is not too happy about what is happening in our country. I think we need to do more. We need to ensure that there's value for money in everything that happens, that every cent that is used from the public purse is a cent worth actually celebrating in the streets.
Ma'am, we have to leave it right there. My colleague Bulelani is on the steps. He will be crossing now.
Well, the Finance Minister did allude on a lot of issues that will need to be done in terms of curbing expenditure. Now, one of the announcements that is made is that municipalities will be decreased in the terms of the number over the next couple of years. And now joined on the line is the AIC MP, Mr. Lulama Nchayisa. The announcements on the decrease or the decrement of the municipalities, do you think that's in the right step?
Yes, I think the minister has pronounced very well on that, because that is what we have been expecting in the AIC. Cutting on some of these things is helping the country. We did expect that.
And just with regards to the fiscal consolidation, are you happy with the announcement that is made?
Very much happy this time, because the minister now was very much frank about the economic challenges that are facing our country. Therefore, it means that something is to be done, though it is always promises now. But now we think this time that these promises now will be fulfilled. That's what we hope as AIC.
All right, Mr. Lulama Nchayisa, MP of the AIC, giving us his party's views around the budget speech that has just been delivered by the Finance Minister. And on that note, we will be crossing again to my colleague Abra Babia, who's standing by on the other side of the precinct.
I'm now going to speak to Mr. Olumisa of the ANC, who's going to speak to me about allocations to the rural poor. Are they enough?
Well, the money and resources are never enough, but we are forever grateful, as especially rural communities. Whenever something is added to what we are getting already in terms of the social grant, the little amount that has been added, amounting to 1,500, I think it means a lot to the communities in the rural areas. But importantly also regarding drought, it's very important that some of the relief now is not going to go just to the commercial farmers, but also to the subsistence farmers that are also struggling to make sure that their animals are in a good condition.
Some of the other parties were complaining that not enough was said about the drought. Do you think that was sufficient in terms of an announcement?
Well, we have to be realistic. Drought is not a man-made phenomenon. It's made by nature, by God. So there's a limit to what we can do. But the amount that has been provided by government towards the drought relief, I think it's something that ought to be appreciated. But it's obviously not enough.
We have to end it there. Thank you so much for your time. Bulelani Phillips, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Abra. Of course, we're still continuing with political reactions. And of course, next to me now is Mr. Julius Malema, the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters. Mr. Malema, a lot has been said in the budget speech. Do you think the budget speech goes far enough in terms of sorting out these economic challenges that we are facing?
Well, we exist in difficult times, and I think that the minister had a difficult task to try and reach out to all the constituencies. A lot of promises have been made, a lot of commitments have been made, and we welcome some. Of course, we have a problem with some. For instance, the issue of saying there are irrelevant posts in government which must be gotten rid of. We are worried about that because we don't think that the government should target civil servants. I mean, the private sector, as it were now, is retrenching. And therefore, we can have another institution which is very important in creating jobs, retrenching in a form of government. And but we think that the minister tried his level best. We'll engage further with the budget when it comes to its debate.
Now, the issue of that you've been trying to champion in Parliament since you've been here, the issue of illicit financial flows, is touched on it, saying perhaps maybe the deadline perhaps of dealing with this issue comprehensively would be 2019. Are you happy with that?
We're very happy because Nene was reluctant on that issue. We wrote a letter to the minister 2 days before, and we're happy that today he responded to it and he even acknowledged the contribution of the EFF on that matter. We're losing a lot of money, and if there's going to be a decisive intervention from the minister's side, that will come to help us to ensure that we indeed create a lot of revenue for the state, which will finance the social project of the government.
All right, Mr. Julius Malema, thank you very much for your time. That is the leader of the EFF, giving us his views that there are pros and there are cons in this budget. And for more reaction, we're going to cross back again to Abra Babia, who's standing by on the other side.
Bulelani, thanks so much. With me right now, I have the Secretary General of the ANC, Mr. Gwedi Mantashe, who's been very busy speaking to everybody around him. So, what do you and your colleagues feel about what the Finance Minister said today? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
What I do, I'm not a Minister of Finance. I'm in the ANC. I always check whether there's coherence between what we say in a January statement, what we say after our Lekhuta, what we say in Sona, and then does it get allocation of resources in the budget. I'm happy with that, having listened to the budget, because resources were allocated to all areas that we have identified as areas of priority.
So as a taxpayer yourself, never mind SG, as a taxpayer yourself,
yes.
We were quite surprised in terms of tax announcements because there were rumors that we, the man in the street, is going to be directly affected by increases in our tax.
Yeah.
Do you think that those announcements made were sufficient as far as tax is concerned?
Yes, but if you listen to the taxes, the bottom end of income earning is always cushioned and protected, which means that there is consideration to protect the poor end of society. But it is important to put additional taxes in various forms. And there is also an element of taxing unhealthy ways of living. And I think that is important to me. But more important to me is the allocation to education, to land, agriculture and food production, allocation to infrastructure, the unification of SAA and SA Express, and the question of the drive for recapitalization thereof and many other state-owned enterprises. I think we can begin to draw important lessons from the Chinese, who always take a minority section, list it, and keep the control in the state. And I think we're learning fast.
Eschi, thank you so much for your time. Bulelani, we are crossing back over to you right now.
Well, we're doing more reaction. Of course, everyone has been commenting around whether does this budget go far enough. And now we're going to be joined by Professor Ray Parsons from the Northwest University. Just around this budget, Prof, does it take us out of the woods?
The most important thing that this budget does is to say strongly, we've got to get this economy moving again. And as the Minister made clear, all roads lead through higher economic growth, inclusive growth. Whether you talk about the government finances, tax revenues, poverty alleviation, employment, all these good things we want have ultimately got to come from getting this economy moving. And so that was his main message. And the important point also was that we must get this economy moving within the framework of our National Development Plan. It's got to be implemented. We must stop talking about it. We must make it happen. And apart from the fact that getting this economy moving is something that we all have to try to do, in particular, his emphasis on the business community and the role they've got to play. If I was a business person in South Africa today, I would explore these new opportunities which have been spelled out by the Minister. The important point now is that we have to send out a message that we can get out of a low growth trap. We don't have to have a recession, but then we've got to make the right choices. There's no good hiding behind the world economy. That's not going to help us. We, as the Minister said, have got to make the right choices, and he's outlined what those choices are here today, and we've got to have the courage to accept them.
All right, Professor Ray Parsons.